Bret Knits Through Alaska, Part 2, The Matanuska Valley. Chapter 1, Wings Over the Last Frontier. The morning air in Haines was crisp and cool, carrying with it the promise of adventure. Bret and Sulu, his energetic and ever-enthusiastic tour guide, stood on the tarmac of the small airstrip, their luggage gathered at their feet. Before them sat a compact single-engine plane, its white and blue paint gleaming in the early light, its propellers still and silent like a sleeping bird of prey. The pilot who emerged from the small terminal building looked impossibly young, his face smooth and unlined, his frame lean and lanky. He couldn't have been more than 16, Bret thought, though something in the confident set of his shoulders and the easy way he moved suggested otherwise. "Morning, folks, I'm Travis. I'll be flying you to Anchorage today," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his smile genuine. Sulu grinned. "Don't let the baby face fool you, Bret. Travis here has logged more hours in the air than most commercial pilots twice his age, started flying when he was 14. Travis laughed, a sound as light and carefree as the wind. 3,000 hours and counting. Bush flying will do that to you. Weather's perfect today, so we should have some incredible views." As they climbed aboard and settled into their seats, the engine roared to life, the propeller spinning into an invisible blur. The plane taxied down the runway, then lifted into the air with a grace that belied its modest size. Below them, Haines grew smaller, the town a collection of colorful dots nestled between the mountains and the sea. The flight was nothing short of spectacular. The landscape unfolded beneath them like a living map, a tapestry of blues and greens and whites. They flew over the Lynn Canal, its waters deep, impossibly blue, and dotted with white sails and fishing boats. The mountains rose on either side, their peaks crowned with snow that glittered like diamonds in the sunlight. Glaciers, ancient rivers of ice, carved their way through the valleys, their surfaces a maze of crevasses and seracs. Travis banked the plane slightly, giving them a better view of a massive glacier that spilled down from the heights, its terminus calving icebergs into a turquoise lake. "That's the Davidson Glacier," he called back over the engine noise. "One of the most active in the region." They passed over dense forests of spruce and hemlock, the trees so thick they looked like a carpet of green velvet. Rivers, silver threads in the landscape, wound their way through the wilderness, their waters clear and cold. Bret pressed his face to the window, drinking in the view, his heart swelling with a sense of wonder and awe. This was Alaska in all its raw, untamed glory, a land where nature still reigns supreme. All too soon, the sprawl of Anchorage came into view, the city a modern contrast to the wilderness they had just flown over. Travis brought the plane down with a smooth, practiced touch, the wheels kissing the runway with barely a bump. A representative from the travel company was waiting for them, a sturdy woman with a warm smile and a firm handshake. She led them to a massive Alaskan SUV, a vehicle that looked capable of conquering any terrain the state could throw at it. Its tires were thick and knobby, its suspension high, and its interior spacious and comfortable. "Welcome to Anchorage," she said. "Where will you go first?" "Lunch," Bret said with a grin. "I'm starving." Sulu confirmed her own hunger as she laughed. "I know just the place." The bar and pub she drove them to was a classic Alaskan establishment, all dark wood and dim lighting, with walls covered in old photographs and fishing memorabilia. The air was thick with the scent of grilled meat and the yeasty aroma of beer. They ordered burgers, thick, juicy patties topped with local cheese and crispy bacon, and a round of craft beers from a nearby brewery. The food was hearty and satisfying, the perfect fuel for the adventures that lay ahead. Chapter 2, Echoes of the Ancestors. After lunch, they headed north out of Anchorage, the city giving way to the open road and the vast, sprawling landscape of the Matanuska Valley. The drive was beautiful, the road winding through forests and along rivers, the mountains a constant, majestic presence on the horizon. Their first stop was the Alaska Native Heritage Center, a sprawling complex dedicated to preserving and celebrating the rich cultural traditions of Alaska's indigenous peoples. The building itself was a work of art, its architecture a blend of modern design and traditional elements, with soaring ceilings and walls adorned with intricate carvings and colorful murals. A guide met them at the entrance, a woman with kind eyes and a voice that carried the weight of generations. She led them through the center, each exhibit a window into a different world. There were displays of traditional clothing, the garments made from caribou hide and seal skin, adorned with intricate beadwork and embroidery. There were tools and weapons, each one a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the people who had thrived in this harsh environment for thousands of years. But it was the art that truly took Bret's breath away. In a large open workshop, several local artisans were at work, their hands moving with a practiced grace as they carved tribal designs into blocks of cedar and spruce. The air was filled with the scent of fresh wood shavings, a clean, earthy smell that was both grounding and invigorating. One carver, an older man with silver hair and hands gnarled by decades of work, was creating a totem pole, the figures emerging from the wood with a lifelike intensity. There was a raven, its wings spread wide, its beak open in a silent cry. Below it, a bear, powerful and protective, and at the base a salmon, the lifeblood of the people, its scales rendered with meticulous detail. Each figure tells a story, the guide explained. The raven is the trickster, the creator. The bear is strength and courage. The salmon is sustenance and renewal. Together, they speak of the balance and interconnectedness of all things. Bret watched, mesmerized as the carver's chisel bit into the wood, each stroke deliberate and sure. It was more than art, it was a language, a way of passing down knowledge and history from one generation to the next. He felt a deep respect for these artisans, for their dedication to preserving their culture in the face of a rapidly changing world. They spent nearly 2 hours at the center, each moment a revelation. There were demonstrations of traditional dances, the performers moving with a fluid grace, their movements telling stories of hunts and celebrations, of hardship and triumph. There were songs sung in languages that predated the arrival of Europeans, the melodies haunting and beautiful. As they left the center, Bret felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had been given a glimpse into a world that was both ancient and enduring, a reminder that Alaska was not just a place of natural beauty, but also a land rich with human history and culture. He expressed his gratitude to Sulu for sharing her country and amazing culture. Chapter 3. A Night in Palmer. The drive from Anchorage to Palmer was a journey through a landscape that seemed to grow more beautiful with each passing mile. The road climbed gently into the foothills of the Chugach Mountains, the valley opening up before them like a green and gold canvas. Fields of barley and hay stretched out on either side, their crops swaying gently in the breeze. In the distance, the peaks of the Talkeetna Mountains rose against the sky, their summits still capped with snow, even in the height of late summer. Palmer itself was a charming town, a place that seemed to exist in a slower, more deliberate time. The streets were lined with log cabins and small family-owned businesses, each one a testament to the pioneering spirit that had built this community. There was a sense of warmth and friendliness here, a feeling that everyone knew everyone, and strangers were simply friends they hadn't met yet. Their lodging for the night was a quaint log cabin lodge on the outskirts of town, nestled among towering spruce trees. The cabin was everything Bret had imagined an Alaskan retreat would be. Rustic yet comfortable, with thick log walls, a stone fireplace, and windows that framed views of the surrounding forest and mountains. The air inside smelled of pine and wood smoke, a comforting, homey scent. The owners, a couple named Tom and Linda, greeted them with the kind of genuine warmth that made Bret feel like he was visiting old friends. Tom was a bear of a man with a bushy beard and a booming laugh, while Linda was petite and energetic, her eyes sparkling with mischief and kindness. "Welcome, welcome," Tom said, clapping Bret on the shoulder. "Make yourselves at home. Dinner's at 6, and we're not taking no for an answer." Dinner was a feast. Linda had prepared a meal that showcased the best of Alaskan cuisine, a hearty stew made with locally raised beef, potatoes, and carrots, all simmered in a rich, savory broth. There was fresh-baked sourdough bread, its crust golden and crispy, its interior soft and tangy. And for dessert, a wild blueberry pie, the berries picked from the hills just behind the lodge, their flavor intense and sweet. As they ate, Tom and Linda regaled them with stories of life in Palmer, of the long, dark winters and the brief, glorious summers, of the challenges and rewards of living in such a remote and beautiful place. They spoke of the community, of neighbors helping neighbors, of potlucks and festivals, of a way of life that was deeply connected to the land. "You folks here for the state fair?" Linda asked, her eyes twinkling. "We are," Sulu said. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." "Oh, you're in for a treat," Tom said. "The fair's tomorrow, and it's something else. Those vegetables. You won't believe your eyes. Make sure you get there early. It gets crowded." As the long daylight drew to a close, Bret stepped outside onto the porch, the cool night air a refreshing contrast to the warmth of the cabin. Later that night, the sky became velvety black, studded with more stars than he had ever seen. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light, and in the distance the faint ghostly glow of the aurora borealis danced on the horizon. It was a moment of perfect peace, a reminder of the vastness and beauty of the world. Chapter 4. Giants of the Fair. The Alaska State Fair was a spectacle unlike anything Bret had ever experienced. The fairgrounds were a sprawling maze of tents and booths, stages and arenas, all buzzing with energy and excitement. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, the smells of fried food and sweet treats, the sights of colorful banners and flashing lights. But it was the vegetables that truly stole the show. In the agricultural pavilion, a crowd had gathered around a display that seemed almost too fantastical to be real. There, resting on a specially built platform, was a cabbage that weighed over 100 pounds. It was a monstrous thing, its leaves a deep, vibrant green, its size almost comical. Next to it was a radish the size of a basketball, its skin a brilliant red, and a turnip that looked more like a boulder than a vegetable. "How is this even possible?" Bret asked, his voice filled with awe. A volunteer, an elderly woman with a kind smile, overheard him. "It's the midnight sun," she explained. "During the summer, we get nearly 20 hours of daylight. The plants just keep growing and growing. And the soil here, enriched by minerals from the Matanuska glacier, it's some of the richest in the world. It's the perfect combination." Bret walked slowly around the display, marveling at each oversized specimen. There were zucchinis as long as his arm, pumpkins that would take 2 men to lift, and carrots that looked like they belonged in a giant's kitchen. It was a testament to the unique environment of Alaska, a place where nature seemed to operate on a grander scale. Beyond the vegetables, the fair was a celebration of all things Alaskan. There were competitions for everything from log rolling to chainsaw carving, demonstrations of dog sledding and reindeer herding, and stages where local musicians played everything from bluegrass to traditional Native American songs. There were booths selling handmade crafts, from jewelry to pottery to woven baskets, each one a work of art. And then, tucked away in a quieter corner of the fairgrounds, Bret stumbled upon a booth that made his heart skip a beat. The sign above it read, "Umingmak Musk Ox Producers Cooperative," and displayed on the table were skeins of yarn in the most exquisite shades of cream, gray, and brown. The yarn was impossibly soft, lighter than air, with a subtle sheen that caught the light. "That's Qiviut," the woman behind the booth said, noticing his interest. "The underwool of the musk ox. It's 8 times warmer than sheep's wool and softer than cashmere, and it doesn't shrink or felt." Bret reached out and touched one of the skeins, his fingers sinking into the cloud-like softness. It was the most luxurious fiber he had ever felt, and he could immediately imagine the beautiful things that could be created with it. "It's incredibly rare," the woman continued. "Musk oxen only produce about 6 pounds of Qiviut a year, and it has to be hand-combed during the spring shed. That's why it's so expensive. But it's worth every penny." Bret picked up a skein, turning it over in his hands, completely entranced. "This is amazing." The woman smiled. "We have a farm up near the glacier. If you're interested, you're welcome to come visit. The fair wraps up tomorrow, but we'll be back at the farm the day after. We'd love to show you around, let you meet the musk oxen." "I'd like that very much," Bret said, his mind already racing with possibilities. The next day, after one final walk through the fair, Bret and Sulu set out for the Matanuska Glacier. The drive took them deeper into the valley, the landscape growing wilder and more dramatic with each mile. The road narrowed, winding through forests and along the edge of steep cliffs, the river below a churning torrent of glacial meltwater. As they rounded a bend, Sulu suddenly hit the brakes. "Look," he said, pointing ahead. In the middle of the road, moving with a slow, deliberate grace, were three moose, a large cow, a smaller bull, and a gangly calf, its legs still too long for its body. They crossed the road at their own pace, completely unconcerned by the presence of the SUV. The calf paused in the middle, turning to look at them with large, curious eyes before its mother nudged it along with her massive head. "That never gets old," Sulu said with a grin. The glacier itself was a sight to behold. It stretched out before them like a frozen river, its surface a chaotic landscape of ice and rock. The ice was a brilliant blue in places, the color so intense it seemed almost unnatural. Crevasses split the surface, their depths dark and mysterious, and seracs, towering blocks of ice, rose like frozen sculptures. They joined a guided tour, donning crampons and helmets before venturing out onto the ice. The surface was surprisingly rough, the ice textured and uneven, carved by wind and water into a million different shapes. Their guide, a young woman with a passion for glaciology, explained how the glacier moved, a slow, inexorable flow driven by the weight of the ice itself. "It moves about a foot a day," she said. "It doesn't seem like much, but over time, it carves valleys, shapes mountains, and creates the landscape we see today." Bret stood on the ice, feeling the cold seep through his boots, listening to the distant crack and groan of the glacier as it shifted and settled. It was a humbling experience, a reminder of the immense power and patience of nature. This ice had been here for thousands of years, and it would be here long after he was gone, a silent witness to the passage of time. Chapter 5. The Gift of the Musk Ox. The drive to the Qiviut farm took them deeper into the heart of the Matanuska Valley, the landscape a stunning panorama of rolling hills and distant snow-capped peaks. The farm itself was a picture of rustic tranquility, a collection of sturdy log buildings and sprawling pastures enclosed by high, strong fences. And in those pastures, grazing peacefully, were the musk oxen. They were magnificent creatures, ancient and powerful, their shaggy coats a cascade of dark brown and black fur that swept the ground. Their heads were massive, crowned with curved, formidable horns that met in a thick boss of bone above their eyes. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their presence exuding a sense of quiet strength and resilience, a living link to the Ice Age. The owner, a woman named Anna, who had the same warm smile as the woman at the fair, greeted them at the gate. She led them on a tour of the farm, her voice filled with a deep love and respect for the animals in her care. "We don't shear them like sheep," she explained, leaning against a fence as a large bull ambled closer, its dark eyes regarding them with a calm curiosity. "The Qiviut is their underwool, the soft, downy layer that keeps them warm through the harsh winters. In the spring, as the weather warms, they begin to shed it naturally. We simply comb it out by hand. It's a gentle process, and the animals seem to enjoy the attention." She showed them the combing process, using a long-tined comb to gently tease the soft, cloud-like fibers from the animal's thick coat. The Qiviut came away in soft, gossamer sheets, a delicate smoky gray that was almost weightless in her hands. After the tour, they entered the storefront, a beautiful log cabin with a high, vaulted ceiling and a large stone fireplace. The air inside was warm and inviting, filled with the clean, earthy scent of wool and the faint aroma of brewing coffee. The walls were lined with shelves, each one a treasure trove of yarn in every color and texture imaginable. But it was the Qiviut that drew Bret's eye, displayed in a place of honor, its soft, muted tones a testament to its natural beauty. In a cozy corner of the shop, a sitting area had been arranged around the fireplace, with comfortable armchairs and a small table. A half-finished sweater lay on one of the chairs, its intricate pattern a work of art. Anna offered them coffee, and they sat for a while, pulling out the rope-like yarn they had started their journey with. The familiar rhythm of the needles was a comforting counterpoint to the newness of their surroundings. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, they cast off the final stitches of their bags, a tangible reminder of the journey they had shared. Before they left, Bret knew he couldn't resist. He spent a small fortune, carefully selecting several skeins of the precious Qiviut in a warm, russet brown, the color of the autumn leaves and rich, fertile earth. Anna bundled it for him with care, the soft yarn nestled in tissue paper like a precious jewel. "Save it for a very special project," she said with a knowing smile. Chapter 6. Gold Fever. Their next adventure took them south, down the scenic Seward Highway and onto the Kenai Peninsula, a land of rugged mountains, pristine rivers, and a history steeped in the promise of gold. They drove to an old mining town, a place where the ghosts of the gold rush still lingered in the weathered facades of the buildings and the stories of the people who called it home. Their guide was an old-timer named Gus, a man whose face was a roadmap of a life lived outdoors, his eyes a brilliant blue that had seen more than his fair share of Alaskan sun and snow. He was a character straight out of a Jack London novel, with a bushy white beard, a twinkle in his eye, and a wealth of knowledge about the history and geology of the region. "You want to find gold?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "You got to learn to think like gold. It's heavy, lazy. It settles in the cracks and crevices, the places where the water slows down. You just got to know where to look." He drove them up a winding dirt road to a secluded spot on a fast-flowing creek, a place he called his special hole. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the sound of rushing water and the scent of damp earth. Gus handed Bret a gold pan, a shallow ridged pan made of dark plastic. He demonstrated the technique, scooping up a panful of gravel and sand from the creek bed, then submerging it in the water. With a gentle, swirling motion, he washed away the lighter material, the sand and pebbles and silt, leaving behind the heavier black sand and, hopefully, the gold. It looked easy enough, but when Bret tried, he found it surprisingly difficult. He swirled too fast, washing everything out of the pan, or too slow, making no progress at all. "Easy does it," Gus said patiently. "It's a dance. You got to feel the rhythm of the water." Bret tried again and again, slowly getting the hang of it. He learned to feel the weight of the material in the pan, to use the ridges to catch the heavier particles, to tilt the pan just so to wash away the dross. And then, just as he was starting to think he'd never find anything, he saw it, a tiny gleaming speck of yellow at the bottom of the pan. It was no bigger than a grain of sand, but it shone with an unmistakable brilliance. He let out a whoop of excitement, holding the pan up for Sulu and Gus to see. Gus grinned, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Well, I'll be. You got the fever now, son." He was right. Bret spent the rest of the afternoon in the creek, his back aching, his hands numb from the cold water. But he didn't care. He was lost in the hunt, the thrill of discovery, the simple, primal joy of finding treasure in the earth. By the end of the day, he had a small vial with a half-dozen tiny gold nuggets at the bottom, a hard-won souvenir of his time in the Alaskan wilderness. Chapter 7. Northern Lights and Knitting Needles. On the drive back toward Anchorage, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Bret and Sulu fell into a comfortable conversation. They talked about the endless days of summer, the midnight sun that fueled the giant vegetables, and the frenetic energy of the season. "It's hard to imagine this place in the winter," Bret said, looking out at the lush green landscape. "It's a different world," Sulu replied. "The darkness comes, and it stays. It can be tough, the cold and the isolation. But then you have the northern lights. Imagine the sky on fire, green and purple and red, dancing and shimmering above you. It's a magic that makes the darkness bearable, even beautiful." That evening back in Anchorage, they went to a cozy restaurant for dinner. The food was delicious, but Bret found himself feeling a little melancholy. He had finished his bag, and his hands felt strangely empty without a project to work on. "I can't believe I don't have anything to knit," he lamented to Sulu, pushing his food around his plate. "It feels wrong." The owner of the restaurant, a woman with a warm, motherly presence, happened to be passing by their table. She overheard Bret's sad tale and smiled. "A knitter in distress? We can't have that," she said. "The best knit shop in Anchorage is just around the corner. They're probably still open. Let me call them for you." True to her word, she made a quick phone call. And a few minutes later, Bret found himself in a yarn lover's paradise. The shop was a riot of color and texture, with skeins of yarn from all over the world piled high on shelves and spilling out of baskets. He spent a happy hour browsing, his fingers trailing over soft merino, sleek silk, and rustic tweed. In the end, he chose a pattern that caught his eye not for its complexity, but for its story. It was a pattern for a shawl, its design inspired by the geometric patterns of traditional African textiles. The shop owner told him it had been designed by a woman in South Africa, a world away from the Alaskan wilderness. Chapter 8. A Feast from the Sea. For his final Alaskan adventure, Bret wanted to experience the bounty of the sea. They booked a charter out of Seward, a picturesque port town nestled between the mountains and the ocean. The boat was a sturdy vessel, its deck cluttered with fishing gear and crab pots, its captain a seasoned fisherman, with a face weathered by years of sun and salt spray. They headed out into the open waters of Resurrection Bay, the sea a deep, churning blue-green. The air was salty and sharp, and the cries of gulls and kittiwakes filled the air. Their first task was to drop the crab pots, large cage-like traps baited with fish heads. They marked the spot with a brightly colored buoy, then headed further out to fish for halibut. The fishing was an exercise in patience and strength. They dropped their lines, weighted with heavy sinkers, down to the depths, hundreds of feet below. Then they waited, the boat rocking gently on the swells. It wasn't long before Bret felt a powerful tug on his line, a dead weight that could only mean one thing: a halibut fish. "You hooked a barn door!" the captain shouted. Reeling it in was a battle. The fish was a powerful, unseen force, fighting every inch of the way. Bret's arms ached, his muscles burned, but he kept cranking the reel, slowly, steadily, until finally the fish emerged from the depths, a massive, diamond-shaped creature with both eyes on one side of its flat, mottled body. It was a magnificent catch, a true monster of the deep. On the way back to port, they stopped to pull up the crab pots. The anticipation was thick as they hauled the heavy traps onto the deck. The first one was a bonanza, filled with a writhing mass of gigantic king crabs, their spiny shells a brilliant red, their long, powerful legs waving in the air. They were the biggest crabs Bret had ever seen, a testament to the cold, rich waters of the North Pacific. That night, they took their catch to a local restaurant that specialized in cooking the day's haul for fishermen. They feasted on fresh-caught halibut, its white, flaky flesh grilled to perfection, and steamed king crab legs, their sweet, succulent meat dipped in melted butter. It was a meal fit for a king, a perfect end to a perfect day on the water. Chapter 9. Saying Goodbye. The 14 days had flown by in a whirlwind of new experiences, breathtaking landscapes, and unexpected friendships. Now standing at the Anchorage airport, it was time to say goodbye. Bret's bags were checked, his flight was boarding, and Sulu was there to see him off. "I can't thank you enough for everything," Bret said, his voice thick with emotion. "This has been the trip of a lifetime." "The pleasure was all mine," Sulu said, her eyes shining. "It was fun showing you my Alaska." They stood in a comfortable silence for a moment, the bustling airport a world away from the quiet solitude of the wilderness they had explored together. "You know," Sulu said with a mischievous grin, "I still can't get over it. You come all the way to Alaska, the land of Qiviut and Musk Oxen, and you leave with a knitting pattern from South Africa." Bret laughed, a genuine, heartfelt sound. "Well," he said, a new idea taking root in his mind, "perhaps that will have to be my next adventure." They embraced, a warm, friendly hug that spoke of a bond forged in shared adventure. "Safe travels, Bret," Sulu said. "Don't be a stranger." "I won't," he promised, and as he walked toward the gate, he knew he meant it. Alaska had captured a piece of his heart, and he had a feeling he would be back. Chapter 10. Home and a New Beginning. Returning to his home in Forest Grove, Illinois, was a strange experience. The familiar comfort of his favorite armchair, the scent of his own coffee brewing in the kitchen, the view of the tree-lined street outside his window. It was all exactly as he had left it. Yet he felt different. The vastness of Alaska had changed him, had stretched his perspective, and filled him with a sense of wonder that he knew would never leave him. After unpacking, he found himself drawn to the bundle of Qiviut yarn he had so carefully carried home. He unwrapped it with a sense of reverence. The soft, luxurious fibers, a tangible link to the Musk Oxen grazing peacefully in the Matanuska Valley. He pulled out the pattern that Anna had given him, a simple, elegant design for a hat. He settled into his favorite chair, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, and cast on the first stitches. The yarn was a dream to work with, gliding effortlessly through his fingers, its softness almost otherworldly. As he worked, he looked out the window at the leaves of the maple tree in his front yard, which were just beginning to turn. They were a warm, russet brown, the color of a fox's fur, the color of the earth, the color of the Qiviut in his hands. A smile spread across his face. The journey was over, but the memories, the stories, the friendships, they would stay with him forever. And in his hands, a new project was taking shape. A new story was beginning to unfold. A piece of the wild, untamed spirit of Alaska, woven into every stitch. Thank you for joining us on The Creative Globe. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment below to keep these stories coming. Whether you're a maker, an artist at heart, or simply someone who loves great storytelling, The Creative Globe offers adventures that inspire, delight, and expand your imagination. Listen, explore, create, only on The Creative Globe.